The autumn night was unusually crisp for September. The gymnasium lights of Willow Creek Middle School flickered faintly from the distance, illuminating the silhouette of laughing children as they spilled out from the school's annual back-to-school dance. It was a tradition for students to dress in their best, donning sparkly dresses and smart blazers as they danced beneath dim, shimmering lights. But for Amelia, this night would become a pivotal moment in her young life, though not for the reasons one might expect. Amelia Crawford was 12, on the cusp of adolescence, but still clinging to the innocence of childhood. With long brown hair that flowed in gentle waves and deep, reflective eyes that spoke of wisdom far beyond her years, she had always been a quiet and introspective girl. Her parents, Laura and James Crawford, were respected in the community. James was a well-known lawyer, and Laura was the head of the local PTA. They were, by all accounts, the picture-perfect family, seemingly untouched by the shadows that lurked behind closed doors. That night, as Amelia danced with her friends, giggling as they fumbled through awkward conversations with boys, she felt a strange sense of anticipation. Something, she couldn't quite put her finger on, was brewing. Perhaps it was the way her body felt heavier than usual, or how a fleeting dizziness had settled in her head as the music pulsed through the gym. But she shrugged it off. After all, she was just a kid at a school dance. What could possibly go wrong? The following morning, Amelia woke up feeling nauseous. Laura noticed her daughter's pale complexion but assumed it was a result of too much excitement from the night before. "It's probably just a little bug," Laura told her, brushing her hair behind her ear. "Drink some water and rest today. You'll be fine by tomorrow." But tomorrow never brought relief. Days passed, and Amelia's condition seemed to worsen. She ate very little, and the once vibrant glow in her eyes had dimmed. Laura became more concerned but chalked it up to the flu. James, who was rarely home due to his demanding job, didn't seem to notice the gradual changes in his daughter. Then came the incident that would unravel their lives. It was late one night when Laura heard a faint whimper coming from Amelia's room. She rushed in to find her daughter curled up on her bed, clutching her stomach, her face contorted in pain. "Amelia, sweetheart, what's wrong?" Laura asked, panicked. Amelia struggled to speak through the pain, but what she finally whispered sent Laura reeling. "Mom, I think I'm pregnant." The words hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Laura's mind raced, trying to make sense of what she had just heard. Amelia? Pregnant? How was that even possible? She was only 12 years old. Surely this was some kind of mistake. Laura knelt down beside her daughter, tears forming in her eyes. "Amelia, are you sure?" "What do you mean?" "I don't know," Amelia said softly, her voice trembling. I just know something's wrong with me." Laura's world was spinning. She felt like she was drowning in confusion, fear, and disbelief. There was no way her daughter could be pregnant. But the pain on Amelia's face was real, and Laura couldn't ignore it. The next morning, without telling James, Laura took Amelia to the doctor. The waiting room felt like a prison cell, with each tick of the clock amplifying Laura's dread. Dr. Whitmore, a kind but no-nonsense woman in her late 40s, ran a series of tests. When she returned to the room with the results, her face was a mask of professionalism, but Laura could see the concern in her eyes. "Mrs. Crawford," she said gently, "I don't know how to say this, but your daughter is pregnant." The room went silent. Laura's heart stopped. She couldn't breathe. No, that's not possible," she whispered, shaking her head in denial. "There must be some mistake." But there was no mistake. Amelia, a 12-year-old girl, was indeed pregnant. The ride home was silent, the weight of the news suffocating. Laura gripped the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. She had no idea how to tell James or what they were going to do. How could this have happened? Who could have done this to her daughter? When they arrived home, Laura sat Amelia down on the couch, her voice shaking. "Amelia, honey, I need you to be honest with me. I won't be mad. I just need to know. Who did this to you? Amelia looked down at her hands, her bottom lip trembling. Mom, I don't know. I don't remember anything happening. Amelia, please. This is serious. You're pregnant. Someone hurt you. I need to know who. Tears streamed down Amelia's face as she shook her head. I swear, Mom, I don't remember. I went to the dance and everything was fine. I didn't leave the gym. I didn't even talk to any boys. I don't understand. Laura felt like her world was crashing down around her. How could her daughter not know? She wanted to scream, to cry, to rage at the injustice of it all, but she knew she had to stay strong for Amelia. Okay, she said softly, pulling her daughter into a hug. We'll figure this out. When James came home that evening, Laura told him the news. At first, he was furious, accusing Laura of lying, of exaggerating the situation. But when she showed him the medical results, his anger turned to disbelief, then to helplessness. How? How could this have happened? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. We don't know, Laura said, her voice hollow. Amelia doesn't remember anything. They sat in silence, the weight of the situation pressing down on them like a suffocating blanket. But there was no time to process the emotions. They needed answers. Over the next few days, they went to the police, hired private investigators, and combed through every detail of Amelia's life, trying to piece together what had happened. But nothing made sense. There were no signs of abuse, no suspicious people in her life. It was as if the pregnancy had come out of nowhere. The media caught wind of the story, and soon the small town of Willow Creek was buzzing with rumors and speculation. Everyone had an opinion. Some whispered about dark family secrets. Others suggested Amelia was hiding something. Laura and James became pariahs in their once supportive community, and even their closest friends began to distance themselves. The tension in the Crawford household grew unbearable. Laura and James, once a strong and united couple, found themselves at odds. Laura blamed James for being absent, for not paying enough attention to Amelia. James, in turn, accused Laura of being overprotective, of sheltering their daughter too much. The arguments were bitter and relentless, each one tearing at the fabric of their marriage. And through it all, Amelia remained a ghost in her own home, withdrawn and confused, carrying the weight of a mystery she couldn't explain. She would sit for hours in her room, staring out the window, lost in her thoughts. The pregnancy progressed, and with it, the strain on the family deepened. One evening, after yet another heated argument, James stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind him. Laura, exhausted and emotionally drained, collapsed on the couch, her head in her hands. She couldn't remember the last time she had felt such despair. The life she had worked so hard to build was crumbling, and she didn't know how to stop it. The following morning, something changed. Amelia, who had been silent for weeks, approached her mother with a strange look in her eyes. "Mom," she said quietly, "I think I remember something." Laura's heart raced. "What is it, sweetheart? What do you remember?" Amelia hesitated, her brow furrowed in concentration. "It's blurry, but I remember being at the dance, and there was this boy. I don't know his name, but he was wearing a green jacket. I didn't think anything of it at the time, but I think he followed me when I went to the bathroom." Laura's breath caught in her throat. "Amelia, are you saying, did something happen with this boy?" "I don't know," Amelia said, tears welling up in her eyes. "I don't remember anything after that. It's like there's a blank space in my memory. But I think he did something. I don't know." Laura's mind raced. Could this be the lead they had been searching for? Could this boy be the one responsible for her daughter's pregnancy? But as quickly as the hope rose, it was replaced by doubt. Amelia's memory was fragmented, and there was no way to confirm her story. Days turned into weeks, and the mystery remained unsolved. Laura and James were at their breaking point, their marriage hanging by a thread. The strain of the situation had taken its toll on their relationship, and they no longer knew how to communicate with each other. Amelia's pregnancy was progressing, and soon there would be a baby, a constant reminder of the nightmare they were living. Then, one day, something unexpected happened. Laura received a phone call from a woman named Sarah Thompson, the mother of one of Amelia's classmates. Sarah had heard about the situation and wanted to offer her help. "I know this is a long shot," she said, "but I think I might know something about that boy your daughter mentioned." Laura clutched the phone, her heart racing. "Please, Sarah, tell me. Anything you know could help." Sarah hesitated before speaking again, her voice low and measured. "There's a boy in Amelia's grade named Liam. He's always been a bit of a troublemaker, but he's never been caught doing anything serious. I remember him wearing a green jacket to the dance. It might be nothing, but I've seen him lurking around some of the younger girls. I thought it was innocent at the time, but now, with everything going on, I'm not so sure." Laura's stomach twisted. She barely knew Liam, but he was the only lead they had. "Thank you, Sarah," she managed to say before hanging up the phone. She sat down, her mind racing. If this boy had something to do with Amelia's pregnancy, she needed to find out. That evening, Laura and James sat down with Amelia to gently press for more details. "Do you remember this boy, Liam?" Laura asked. "Does that name ring a bell?" Amelia frowned, her gaze distant as she tried to recall. "Maybe. I think he was there, but I didn't talk to him. I remember seeing him, though. He was hanging out near the bathrooms, but that's all I know." Laura glanced at James, who sat rigid on the couch. "I think we need to talk to Liam's parents," she said. "We can't just let this go. If he did something to our daughter, we need to know." The next day, Laura and James paid an unannounced visit to Liam's house. His mother, a weary-looking woman named Diane, opened the door with a surprised expression. "Mrs. Crawford, Mr. Crawford, what's going on? Is something wrong?" Laura could feel James tense beside her, his hands clenched into fists. She spoke quickly, hoping to diffuse the tension. "Diane, we need to talk to you about something very serious. It's about your son, Liam." Diane's face paled. "What about Liam? What's happened?" James, unable to hold back, blurted, "Your son might have done something to our daughter at the school dance. We need to know where he was that night." Diane's eyes widened in shock. "What are you saying? Liam would never... He's just a boy. He doesn't..." But Laura interrupted, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. "We're not accusing him of anything yet, but Amelia remembers seeing him, and she's pregnant, Diane. Something happened to her that night, and we need to know if Liam was involved." The weight of their words seemed to hit Diane like a physical blow. She staggered back slightly, her hand gripping the doorframe for support. "Oh my God," she whispered. "I don't know what to say." "We need to speak with Liam," James said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Now." Diane hesitated, but finally nodded. "He's in his room. I'll get him." When Liam came downstairs, his expression was one of confusion and mild annoyance. He was a lanky boy with dark hair that flopped over his forehead, and he wore the typical air of a preteen boy caught off guard. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice a mix of defiance and wariness. Laura studied him closely, searching for any sign of guilt or remorse. "Liam," she began gently, "we need to ask you about the night of the school dance. Do you remember seeing Amelia?" Liam blinked, clearly confused. "Amelia? Yeah, I saw her, but I didn't talk to her or anything." James's voice was tight with barely contained anger. "We know you were wearing a green jacket that night. Amelia says she saw you near the bathrooms. What were you doing there?" Liam shrugged, his face blank. "I don't know. Just hanging out, I guess. I wasn't doing anything wrong." Laura pressed on, her heart pounding. "Did you follow Amelia when she went to the bathroom? Did something happen between you two?" Liam's eyes widened in genuine shock. "No, I didn't do anything, I swear." He looked at his mother, panic rising in his voice. "Mom, I didn't do anything to her. I don't even remember talking to her." But the intensity in his voice wasn't enough to reassure Laura or James. They left the house that night with no more answers than when they arrived, and the nagging suspicion lingered in the air like a dark cloud. Liam had denied everything, but the mystery of what had happened to Amelia remained unsolved. Days turned into weeks, and as the pregnancy progressed, so did the strain on the Crawford family. Laura and James were barely speaking, and when they did, it was only to argue about how to handle the situation. James was convinced that Liam was guilty, while Laura wasn't sure what to believe. Amelia, meanwhile, was growing more and more withdrawn, retreating into herself as the reality of her pregnancy became undeniable. The police had investigated Liam, but without solid evidence or a confession, they couldn't press charges. It felt like a dead end, and the Crawfords were left in a limbo of fear, suspicion, and uncertainty. Then came the day that changed everything. It was a quiet afternoon when Laura received a phone call from an unknown number. She answered, expecting it to be another concerned friend or curious reporter, but the voice on the other end was one she didn't recognize. "Mrs. Crawford," the voice said, "I think you deserve to know the truth." The voice belonged to someone she had never met, a woman named Rachel. She explained in halting and shaky tones that her son had attended the dance that night as well. He had been there with Liam and some other boys, and while nothing had seemed unusual at the time, something had been bothering her son ever since. Rachel's son, a quiet and introverted boy named Ethan, had seen something that night. He hadn't spoken up before because he was scared, but after weeks of silence, he had finally confided in his mother. Ethan had seen Liam sneaking into the girls' bathroom following Amelia, and though he hadn't witnessed anything directly, he had heard muffled voices and what sounded like a struggle. Rachel's voice trembled as she recounted her son's story. "I don't know what happened in there, Mrs. Crawford, but I thought you should know. My son was afraid to say anything, but I couldn't keep quiet any longer." Laura's heart raced. This was it, the missing piece. She thanked Rachel and hung up, her hands shaking as she dialed the police. Liam was brought in for questioning again, and this time, under pressure, his story began to crumble. Bit by bit, the truth came out. He had followed Amelia into the bathroom, egged on by his friends, thinking it was all a joke. He hadn't meant for things to go as far as they did, but when Amelia resisted, panic had set in. Liam's confession was gut-wrenching, and it shattered any remaining illusion that the Crawford family had held on to. The truth was out, and it was ugly. Liam had taken advantage of Amelia, a frightened girl who hadn't understood what was happening to her. The revelation destroyed more than just the Crawford family. Liam's family was torn apart as well, his parents struggling to come to terms with what their son had done. The town, once a close-knit community, became divided by the scandal. Everyone had an opinion, and no one knew how to move forward. As the months passed, the Crawfords did their best to rebuild their lives. Amelia gave birth to a baby boy, a child she hadn't asked for, but loved nonetheless. Laura and James remained together, though their relationship was forever changed by the trauma they had endured. The truth had come out, but it had left a trail of devastation in its wake. In the end, there were no winners, only survivors, each of them carrying the weight of what had happened and trying, in their own way, to heal.